Welcome to the Passive House podcast, brought to you by Passive House Accelerator, a catalyst for zero carbon building. For news, inspiration, and connections from all flavours of Passive House, check out passivehouseaccelerator.com. Sign up to receive regular updates about events, get your technical questions answered, and contribute to the community forum. There's loads of free information for experienced professionals and people just starting out on their Passive House journey. We hope to see you at one of our construction, tech, or weekly Global Passive House Showcase webinars. In the meantime, here's this week's Passive House podcast. Well, welcome back to another episode of the Passive House podcast. I'm Matthew Cutler-Welsh, coming to you from Auckland in New Zealand.
And I'm Zach Semke, coming to you from Seattle, Washington.
How's everything going, Zach?
It's good. It's Friday right now as we're recording, which is exciting. So I'm looking forward to the weekend. There's a lot of soccer for my family. We're needing to do a 3-hour drive. Not great for the climate. 3-hour drive to a soccer game in Vancouver, Washington on Saturday for my daughter. And how about you?
Good. Yeah, so school's gone back. This is the beginning of the school year for us, and school's actually gone back, which is great. Everyone's back in class, probably learning a lot about cross-flow ventilation right now. But it's actually quite a pleasant time of year to have all the doors and windows open in classrooms. It's pretty warm at the moment.
Are you going to stash one of those CO2 monitors in your kids' backpacks?
Well, actually, someone's done a quite a large procurement of a number of CO2 monitors. So suddenly we're starting to see air quality monitors pop up in classrooms. It's a shame that it took a global pandemic for that to happen.
Yeah.
But we actually that's a thing now. We're starting to measure the quality of air that our kids are breathing. So that's going to be interesting. I hope that we take notice of that beyond just the immediate need of keeping people healthy and protected from a virus, because I know from my previous experience measuring CO2 in classrooms that it can go way off the dial in a very short amount of time when you've got 30 kids in a closed space.
And that has immediate impacts on our ability to learn. There's that we should share in show notes. There's that Harvard study, the public Department of Health, or not a School of Public Health, I think, is showing the impacts of just once you get even to 1,500 parts per million, the noticeable impact that has on learning outcomes.
Yeah, it's really hard to learn when you're falling asleep.
Yeah, exactly. Which is probably like, back in the days when we actually had like meetings at work in conference rooms.
Yeah.
You're like feeling exhausted. I think it's probably just like it was hypoxic.
Everyone's asphyxiated.
Exactly. Exactly.
So yeah, good times for us. So yeah, back to a schedule and to some degree anyway. And that's a nice. Little bit about. I was really excited to catch up with Giorgia Tzar a couple of weeks now, but. Part of the point of that was to talk about what is coming up in 2022, and she's been a previous guest on the show, but this was a chance to sort of catch up and talk about what's coming up at the Institute. But before we get into that, let's thank our sponsors.
Indeed. So our founding sponsors are 475 High Performance Building Supply, Baxter Ingwe Architects, Glavel Foam Glass Gravel, Minutair all-in-one HVAC and dehumidification units, Mitsubishi Electric Train HVAC US, Partel, Rockwell North America, Stocorp, and Zola Windows. Our champion sponsors are Icon Windows and Doors, Proseco, and SIGA, and our stakeholder partner is NYSERDA, the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority. So thanks to all of Passive House Accelerator's sponsors for making everything we do possible.
And And let's get on with the show and to our interview. So Giorgia Tzar, as I said, she's a familiar guest on the Passive House podcast. I think you did a bonus episode with Giorgia quite recently.
Yeah, that's right. As part of the International Passive House Conference. Yep, it was great.
So Giorgia is based in Stuttgart in Germany, and she runs the International Passive House Association at the Passive House Institute. And it's been an interesting couple of years for them, as it has been for all of us. We've all had to work a little bit differently, but the work has definitely continued for the Institute because interest in Passive House is growing strongly all around the world, and not just with designers and building owners. So governments and policymakers are paying attention to what Passive House is up to. And in this interview, Giorgia shared some of her recent and also ongoing work helping to shape energy and climate policy at the United Nations Climate Change Conference. And we also had a bit of a chat about some of the exciting projects and activities that the Institute have got coming up for 2022. So here she is. This is Giorgia Tzar at the Passive House Institute. Let's kick off. Thank you, Giorgia. Great to have you back on the Passive House podcast. How's the weather in your part of the world? You're not in Darmstadt, is that? Are you just out of Darmstadt?
Yeah, I'm a bit further south in Stuttgart, so one state over.
And was this coming up mid to end of January? How's have you got any snow?
We had some sleet today, but there's not been any real snow days so far. It's all been a bit blue sky and sunny but cold. It's been quite a mild winter.
And lots of people still hunkering down, keeping to themselves a little bit around there at the moment.
Yeah, but that's a bit of the nature of January anyway. After seeing everybody for the holidays, I think people use the month to, rehabilitate their ability to hang out with large amounts of people again.
Yeah.
Not that they should be doing that in a pandemic, mind you.
Now, last we had you on the show, you was a catch up, I think, that Zach had with you during the conference last year, which was a virtual catch up, I think.
Yeah, he called me from the US. So.
He was hoping to get over there, but for those that sort of missed that in everything that was going on, give us a quick review of the Passive House conference last year.
Yeah, so we did a hybrid conference. So the first part was done as a studio event up in Wuppertal in Germany. And so we live broadcasted what was happening in Wuppertal online as well, so people could join from all over the world. And then the second part of the conference was entirely digital. So we once again had our online trade fair or exhibition, all of our different sessions, and of course the plenaries with our keynote speakers. So it was a really nice event. And I did enjoy learning a lot about studio conferences. I'd never done one before, but definitely came in handy later that year when some of our events at COP were online as well, or digital, and also in person. So it's the same kind of studio setup, and I had some experience and was no longer quite so confused about how to run it.
Yeah, so that's a good point. COP is another big highlight for 2021. And what was Passive House involvement there?
We had quite a lot of involvement. I spent much of the second half of 2021 trying to wrangle plans for COP together. It's always one of those things where we, even at the last minute, more events for us to participate in popping up, and last minute things have to get organized. So in the end, we ran our annual COP Passive House tour with a lot of participants, and we got to view a passive house, so an Enerfit retrofit, some new builds, and a high-rise. So all very exciting projects in and around Glasgow. And then we had some events at the EU Pavilion and at the Buildings Pavilion, which was run by the Global Alliance of Building Construction, which we're members of. And so we used those opportunities to talk about the Efficiency First campaign, or energy, good if I remember the name, Efficiency the Best Renewable Energy is the slogan, and the hashtag is Efficiency First. And also about the Glasgow Icebox Challenge, which was a part of that campaign, and a good opportunity to highlight just how large a role energy efficiency plays in buildings on a smaller and more interactive scale for the public.
Do you think that all of the other people coming to events like COP, who, massive array of experts, but also politicians, media, do they get is your feeling they get a sense of where Efficiency First fits in, and where things like Passive House fit into the mix? Because I imagine there's people there that are just pushing all sorts of different technologies and different agendas, and so many issues to, from agriculture to sequestration to solar panels. Is it hard to get noticed as someone who just wants to build buildings more efficiently?
It certainly can be. We took advantage of the Built Environment Day, which was specifically talking about construction, buildings, and cities. So that is a really good opportunity because there's a specific day for it to highlight topics under that umbrella.
Mm-hmm.
On other days, when it is, for example, Nature Day, we do need to see if there are events running where the information and the knowledge we have to impart is applicable. But when the day is not necessarily specifically relevant to us, it's always a good opportunity for networking and finding people who might have similar topics or projects going on where we might have a crossover opportunity. On the topic of whether or not politicians and other decision makers really understand the importance, I mean, they deal with a huge amount of topics, but there's definitely been a huge increase in understanding and respect for an efficiency first approach, and that taking that fabric fast approach and performance-based standards is necessary to successfully reduce carbon emissions in buildings. So I do see progress there. Whether or not it's the only progress being made, or whether politicians are focusing on other things going on at COP and in their spheres, I'm not sure, but it's really nice to see things moving.
Yeah, awesome. That's very encouraging because that the statistics come up fairly regularly. I think it's around 30 to 40% globally, slightly less here for us here in New Zealand because we have lots of sheep and cows, but buildings contribute a significant amount to that overall emissions. So on the flip side, that means that buildings can also be a big part of the solution for reducing our impacts on climate change. So definitely worthy to be there at the table. That pavilion was pretty exciting. Of note, I have to push a certain New Zealand exhibit in the virtual pavilion last year, which was pretty exciting. It was a social house from which hopefully we're going to get more content about that on the show. I've already talked to one of the architects of that project, but very exciting to have a mention there.
Yeah, there were quite a few projects. That was the UK's Green Building Pavilion, and they had a digital exhibition showing off highly energy efficient and sustainable projects. And I think there were 13 projects chosen, and of those, 4 or 5 were passive house projects. So
it was awesome.
It was really excellent to have such strong representation.
Definitely. Well, let's come back to the Institute. How things been going? You had the big conference last year. What are the plans for 2022?
There are quite a lot of plans for 2022. So, as you will know, 2021 was quite a big year for the Passive House Institute. It was its 25th anniversary. We also had the 25th International Passive House Conference, and it was the 30th anniversary of building the first Passive House. So, in 2022, why stop the fun while we're already so far ahead? And it is our special year for Passive House education. So we're celebrating 10 years of certified Passive House tradesperson training and 15 years of certified Passive House designer and consultant training. So we're looking forward to a lot of different events and promotions surrounding that, and really looking at what Passive House capacity building has achieved for the worldwide community and Passive House over the last 10 to 15 years.
Yeah, I mean, that from my experience of the particularly the tradesperson stuff is really exciting because I just love the experiences that I've had with builders who just come alive when they learn about the craftsmanship involved in doing Passive House. Certainly you need the designers and the consultants and the people doing the drawings and the modelling, but also recognising the value of good tradespeople, I think, is fantastic. So 15 years of, what did you say, of tradesperson?
Yeah, designers and consultants, and 10 years of the tradesperson course. And as you may have also seen, the last 2 years, the course range has been expanding. So there's additional seals that Passive House professionals can achieve. There's Passive House PHPP expert, site supervisor, component verifier, and a range of others. And the course offer is always growing. So it's been really nice to see, and the training and professional certification department's been working hard to make that happen.
Now, I won't delve too much into the technical side, PHPP. That reminds me, we should get someone on to do a deep dive into version 10 of that at some stage. Let's talk a little bit more about the association, because that's kind of your bag. Just remind people what the association is and how where it sits amongst the institute.
Yeah, of course. So IFA, or the International Passive House Association, we're the international network of Passive House stakeholders. So we work globally to support our members who are all acting locally. We have well over 5,000 members worldwide and 22 affiliate organizations, so our partners in various countries and regions who implement Passive House information and research, and they disseminate all this knowledge in their local languages and partner with us to help spread information on the Passive House standard. So we offer all of our members a range of benefits. We advocate for the Passive House standard at different events on the world stage. And of course, as I said, we support our members and affiliate with local Passive House organizations. So we really embody our slogan, think global, act local.
Do you know off the top of your head who your most recent affiliate is?
Our most recent affiliate would probably be Chile. So we have our Chilean affiliate would be our most recent, but we have a couple more in the pipeline for 2022. I can't tell you too much more yet, but it'll hopefully be a very big year for IFA.
Great. It's good that you mentioned Chile because I know that there have been, some of those more recent affiliates have been more around the tropics, warmer climates, and varying climates, and that's really exciting to see. Again, from my perspective, particularly looking at some projects in Australia and the warmer parts of New Zealand, it's really exciting to see people talking about how to do design of energy efficient buildings. And I think it's becoming more of a thing everywhere to figure out how to design buildings that keep cool just as much as ones that keep warm in the winter.
Certainly. Overheating has been an ongoing topic in countries where traditionally they haven't needed any form of cooling. So it's making passive house more relevant than ever, especially because ideally people will design out the issues with their buildings rather than just installing active cooling when it's something they can conquer without that extra technology. And then for hot climates where, of course, active cooling is going to likely be needed, just reducing that demand as much as possible. So it's a really interesting topic for sure. A lot of shading and thinking practically about how we are using the sun's gains as best as possible. So yeah, it's definitely an interesting one. There's quite a lot of information on it on Passipedia, which we've been expanding upon. I think this month alone we've put 6 new articles up, so always worth checking out.
Where can people find that? Because that is a fantastic resource if people haven't checked it out already.
Yeah, so if you just check out passipedia.org, or if you go via the IFA website, we have links to it all over our website. And we've got new pages set up on it, so different landing pages on different topics to make navigating Passipedia easier, as it is quite an in-depth resource with a lot of different information on a lot of different passive house related topics. So there's landing pages such as tools. I think there's one for hot climates and many more.
Now let's talk other events and activities. We talked about COP and the last Passive House conference. What's coming up for 2022?
There's quite a lot. So first we have the Sydney Icebox Challenge opening up next month, and we're in talks with quite a few other groups worldwide about having local icebox challenges. That was quite a large-scale project last year that I helped run in Glasgow. So IFA's producing a guide on how to implement icebox challenges.
You said Sydney there, right?
Sydney, yeah, in Australia.
Yeah.
So they're from, I don't remember the exact date, start of February, the very, very hot time where...
Yeah, that's a good time to be trying to keep ice cold.
We'll be really, truly testing the ice boxes. So you can check out more information on that on iceboxchallenge.org. Awesome. So we put all of the information on different icebox challenges happening and coming up, as well as past results on that website. Also in 2021, IFA launched the Efficiency the First Renewable Energy campaign, so Efficiency Fast. And we worked with our affiliates to run a series of activities and events over the year to promote energy efficiency and an efficiency-first approach to design and building. So in 2022, we'll be expanding on that campaign, preparing materials and activities for universities, youth, and policymakers specifically. And so our first project, I just started on it today actually, is putting together a series of Passive House informational materials for universities, and we'll be working with Passive House lecturers on that, and especially for architecture and environmental engineering departments, because we recognise that is the future, that those students are the future of the built environment, so hoping to teach them about Passive House young.
I love the idea of a Passive House lecturer. So many of the architects I've spoken to who have become Passive House consultants and designers didn't do much about Passive House or hardly heard about it in university, regardless of where they went to university and where they studied. It seems that in that so I guess as a previous generation, there's been very little formal training in Passive House. So, including that in there, I think is a great idea, and it's globally applicable. I guess it's challenging because everyone wants lecturers to talk about everything, but just seems so relevant to include those, and so important to include them early on in people's careers.
Definitely. It was something I really took on board last year working on the Glasgow Icebox Challenge. Part of that was a student design competition, and upon talking to the winning student team from Robert Gordon University in Aberdeen, they were talking about how they when they were looking for graduate degrees in architecture, one of their requirements was that there was a lot of environmental engineering, environmental architecture related topics in the actual curriculum, and how difficult it was to find a university that didn't just kind of nod towards environmentalism in their curriculum, but actually actively trained their students in, what sustainable architecture is and how to do it. So obviously we are able to pass on some of the things that we have gained, some of the knowledge that we have gained through 15 years of certified passive house designer courses and 10 years of the trades passing course, and so many of my colleagues, lecture at universities themselves. So we will be taking advantage of that and disseminating that information and those lessons learned.
Great. It's kind of challenging. Well, I think one of the excuses that gets used is that the building codes are different in different all around the world. But I think we just kind of need to get over that and realize that the climate is the same and physics is the same, so that kind of regardless of what your local building, sure, your graduates have to know how to build and with the local rules, but it still makes sense to have something that's based in science and based on physics to be taught, and then for people to figure out how to implement that appropriately in their jurisdiction.
Definitely, and it's one of those things. Every country seems to approach architecture studies differently. So some countries take it as a very technical degree with a lot of structural engineering type coursework, and other countries treat it like an arts degree. So it's much more aesthetics based. And I think that it doesn't serve students to separate the two topics. It can and has to be both. They need to be able to design highly energy efficient, sustainable buildings, and buildings that their clients will like, that are attractive and fit for purpose. But I just think at the moment, a building that is aesthetically pleasing but isn't meeting the demands of our climate and the climate change isn't fit for purpose. And, I don't think anyone wants to sell, design, or work on a faulty product. So we need to be educating students from the outset so that this issue doesn't come up and they're prepared for the future of the building market.
Do you know much about what's going on in retrofit world at the moment, either through the association or just projects that are out there? Because that's the other thing that I'm really interested in, is what we do with all the buildings that already exist. And I know that there's a handful of exciting Enerfit projects, places like New York, where some passionate building owners are doing those. What's going on in Europe in the Enerfit space?
So we've got the EU project Outfit, so Outphit, as the common passive house pun goes.
Yeah.
Eurofit. We've found a pattern and we're running with it. So that's on the Dutch Energiesprong, which is an idea of prefabricated components and prefabricated retrofitting approaches. So we'll be doing that to the Passive House standard, or the Enerfit standard. And that project will run over the next few years, but there's already some test projects kind of in the making. You can find out more on the project on outfit.eu. And there's also, later this month, there'll be a webinar on the project explaining what the goals are, where we're at, and where to go from here. I think one of the most important things in Europe is, of course, Europe is mostly existing building stock. At least where I live, there's not a lot of spare places to build new buildings. So it really is a topic of a question of how do we retrofit at scale, but also how do we retrofit properly.
Yeah.
And so I'm sure you're aware of my colleague Jürgen Schnieder's tool, the District PH, which was developed as part of a previous EU project. And that really allows policymakers to look at districts on the whole and make retrofitting decisions according to the information they provide, what is going to be the best long-term decision for retrofitting at scale, so that there's no lock-in effects, but also other issues that politicians have to face, obviously, like cost effectiveness and sourcing of the actual parts and components for the retrofits. They can use district pH to predict and thus predict what the retrofit could look like for the district and make their decisions accordingly.
Such a powerful thing, and obviously it's going to have to be more than just a passionate architect or an individual building owner who's engaging with something like that. It's going to have to be probably large-scale developers or even councils and policymakers looking at wider scales. But if that can be done, looking at a whole large section of a city or development, that's a massive opportunity.
It's really important too. Because, at this point, I think most countries have made promises about, how they're going to become more sustainable, how they're going to manage their carbon budget and all of those things. But what's really at this point where we need to put our money where our mouths are, we can't just make vague promises of 2030 or 2050. We need to be actually implementing this. And retrofitting is one of those things. We not only have a risk of lock-in effects if we're not doing it properly the first time, but it's also something that takes time and takes money and planning. So we really need to get ahead of it. And so there are tools available, and those are always being expanded upon. So I'm really looking forward to the outcomes of the Outfit project, because I suspect that prefabricated retrofits will be will play a very large role in the future of the renovation wave.
What is the lock-in effect, and why is that bad?
So the lock-in effect we speak of is when, for example, we know we need to fix, the building. It's from the 60s or the 70s. We know we need to replace the windows, but instead of going for triple glazed, climate appropriate windows, we decide to save a little bit of money up front and get just maybe double glazed, and they're not properly installed. And the thing is, we're not going to replace those windows immediately just because they are not doing the best job possible. We've already spent the money. And so now we're locked into those for a set amount of time until it's time to redo the windows, for example. And in that time, we've not only got we're not benefiting personally from more comfortable component use and everything else, but we're wasting energy and thus also our own money in that time period. So the lock-in effect really refers to a phenomenon I'm sure we've all made the mistake of, where we bought cheap and then had to buy twice. But with building supplies, we often don't buy it twice anytime soon. So we're talking about that period in between before we retrofit again.
So it's kind of a case of making it a little bit better isn't necessarily better than making it much better. In fact, it may be worse because you're missing the opportunity to go all the way.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a question of, if you're going to do it right. There's a saying in the area I live in Germany, which roughly translates as if you do it wrong, you'll do it twice. And that's what we want to avoid. We want to get it right the first time.
Nice. Now let's go back to conferences. Is there no international conference for 2022?
There is not an International Passive House conference this year, but all the better for next year when we'll be going bigger. I can't say much to that though, but I'm sure you knew that.
No, well, I mean, it's not major news in the context of everything else that's going on. The South Pacific Passive House Conference this year will in fact be just like the Olympics. It'll be the 2021 conference happening in 2022. So, these things have been a little bit disrupted, but it's great to see people pivoting and making the most of those. I think you alluded well to the fact that you had a great virtual offering last time round, and as we're all learning to do the best of both worlds, still really valuing those in-person experiences and facilitating networking events, open houses where we can make those happen. I mean, they're continue, I think, to be one of the highlights and one of the most important things that all of the affiliates can get behind and involve people on the ground, because those are really just amazing experiences. They're transformative experiences when people actually go into a passive house in their local area and feel it, because you can't get that from just looking at a picture on a web page.
I fully agree. So the International Passive House Open Days will be going ahead as planned. So we have those twice a year to make up for the fact that we deal all over the world, and thus different hemispheres have different seasons at any one time. So those are usually in June and in November. The last 2 years now, wow.
Our mid-year ones tend to be even more effective, because that's when it's cold and people go and visit.
Exactly. They're like, oh, okay, I've gotten up. It's a cold Saturday morning, but let's go visit a warm passive house.
Yeah.
And so we'll be doing those again, of course. We've been doing a hybrid event of that with online video tours and other events, so Q&A sessions. We did meet the affiliates last year, so everyone could meet the different international and local associations. And we will also be running, of course, all of our project spotlights and webinars throughout the year. So although there's not an International Passive House conference planned for 2022, there's certainly enough Passive House events going on. And we publish a calendar of what's on this week on Mondays, but you can always just check the EFA event calendar if you're looking for some Passive House input for your week.
Yeah, I encourage people to do that, because that's events all around the world, and it's quite hard to nail down a single source of all those. So as well as the Passive House Accelerator website, there's also that EFA calendar of events there for checking out what's going on anywhere. Awesome. Hey, well, thank you, Giorgia. Is there anything else exciting from association or the institute that we need to know about for this year?
I am just looking forward to expanding on the Efficiency First campaign. It's been really gratifying to see how well this coordinated effort has come together. With coordinating with our EFA affiliates worldwide, we've managed to produce videos and flyers and blog articles in multiple languages. So at this point, we have it in French and English, a range of English versions, so British and American. Then we of course have like German, Hungarian, Mandarin, Chinese, Arabic, Russian. It's just been really fantastic, and it's been amazing to not just see the multiple languages, but also the locally adapted regional editions of all of these things. So do check them out. I highly recommend it to everybody. It's been a really rich resource and a really great experience to see what the Passive House community can do when we work together.
Awesome. Well, keep up the good work, Giorgia, and I hope you get back into your office at some stage this year and have some one-on-one time with your directly with your colleagues. But in the meantime, keep up the good work, and thank you for all the work that you do and all of the other colleagues at the Institute as well.
Thanks for having me.
Giorgia Tzar there is based in Stuttgart. She's actually not been commuting into the office in Darmstadt for coming up nearly 2 years now. But as I said, their work has continued. We're working remotely and continuing to do very great and important work there, which is having influence around Europe and around the world. So it's really great to acknowledge all the great work that the whole team does at the Institute. What do you think, Zach?
Well, great interview, and it's always really fun to hear from Giorgia what's going on at the Institute and at the association. I was again reminded, aren't we fortunate that we have folks like Giorgia and Aoife, and in this case, the local community in Glasgow advocating for or raising awareness about the potential for Passive House to be part of climate solution making at COP. I mean, I'm just really thankful that they have that presence there. I know it's probably not easy work and a pretty chaotic environment, I think, with lots of moving parts at COP. But I was again reminded of how appreciative I am of that effort.
Yeah. Giorgia, once we'd stopped recording, she did sort of let me into some of the background of being at something like COP. I mean, just yesterday I was scheduled to meet with one of our members of Parliament here. I was just listening into a meeting that we had planned, and we got bumped at the last minute. And I was totally not surprised by that, because that's just what happens with politicians. And I can imagine, a conference that's organized, it was based around the high-level ministers from all around the world, would just be a bit like herding cats. But it is important work, and really exciting and significant to know that things like Passive House are being taken seriously by those policymakers and leaders from around the world as a real solution to some of the issues that we're facing. I also think it's really great to acknowledge the Institute, not just as a technical group and people who do certification, all the important work that goes around that, verifying Passive House projects, but that there are people there that are focused on having these important conversations and networking with leaders and trying to influence policy at a really wide scale and at a really high level. So we kind of, at least I sort of forget that work goes on in the background, and it's ongoing. As soon as Giorgia was finished with COP last year, planning starts for the next round.
Indeed. Well, I mean, your conversation with her was a little bit of a tour of the different audiences that Aoife is working to influence. At COP, it was the international policy making community. She was talking about the educational initiatives with equipping Passive House lecturers to reach students in colleges around the world, and the outfit is about I think a combination of developers and policymakers and practitioners, and then the things like the Energy First campaign, or Energy Efficiency First, and the Sydney Icebox Challenge, more kind of this more public awareness efforts. So it's multifaceted, and that's important. Those are all critical audiences as we think about how to move this transition forward quicker.
Yeah. So outfits, definitely check that out. That's out and then fit with a PH. So out, PHIT .eu. And there's some really cool stuff there. There's a whole bunch of different languages, so it's a very international site. But yeah, really exciting to see that investigation and solutions for retrofitting insulation and thermal performance to the outside of buildings, because that's a challenge everywhere. What we do to all of our existing buildings to bring them up to a decent standard for occupants, and also to have less impact on the climate and on the world in general. So check that out. It's a great resource. And Icebox Challenge coming up. We're excited to see
February 21st, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and excited to see how long that ice can last in
Right.
the summer heat in the middle of Sydney.
Right. It looks like it's February 21st to March 4th. So
and the ice is not going to last anywhere near.
Right. I mean, so
well, in the standard box, that is.
No, right, exactly.
Passive house box, we'll see.
Right.
Yeah.
No, it probably will. It probably will. We'll see. Yeah, but we'll see. It's definitely intense conditions for sure.
If you have no idea what we're talking about, then check it out, iceboxchallenge.org. It's a great visual demonstration of a standard construction right next to a passive house type construction, and in a pretty full-on climate like Sydney in the summertime. It can be, I would suggest, fairly rapid.
I think so.
Awesome. All right. Anything else from you, Zach?
No, thanks for the great interview. It was really fun to listen to.
And shout out to some of our colleagues and counterparts over in Ireland and Scotland, and all the great work that affiliate groups and other passive house people are doing. The attention was put on Glasgow last year. It'd be great to get them on the show sometime and talk about what's happening in the passive house world, specifically around Scotland and up that part of the world too. So maybe we'll do that in the future.
Yeah.
Awesome. What have we got coming up, Zach?
Well, this coming week at Passive House Accelerator Live, we're going to be doing the Construction Tech Edition. So again, we're doing our programs now on Wednesdays in my time zone, which means Thursdays in your time zone. The first and third Wednesday of the month, we will do a project showcase edition of Passive House Accelerator Live. And then on the second and fourth month, we'll do a construction tech edition. So this coming Wednesday, Thursday your time, will be a construction tech edition, and it will feature none other than Kevin Brennan of Brennan Insulation and Airtightness, and he's going to be diving into smart airtightness strategies. So this month is airtightness month at the Accelerator. We just had Ed May talk about 10 ways to screw up your blower door score last week, which was really fun. And so Kevin's gonna be sharing a bunch of his expertise. So please join us for that. And then we're going to have another person who will be familiar to Passive House podcast listeners, Shan Taylor of Team Green Architects, and she is going to be presenting on the following week, February 16th, which is February 17th for you in Australia and New Zealand. She'll be presenting about about her passive house project in New Zealand, and then the next day we will have a passive house component spotlight, the first that we've done with Proseco. So Proseco will be presenting on Thursday, February 17th, which is Friday for you, on air barriers for passive house retrofits and new construction. So really, I'm looking forward to this one. It's, a bunch of fluid applied solutions for air barriers, WRBs, and they've also done some really interesting work to remove phthalates from their the composition of their products, which is so they're in compliance with the red list that the Living Future Institute has out. So you can learn all about that. We'll have there's other passive house events as well, and we'll have a link to everything in show notes.
And check those all out at passivehouseaccelerator.com. If you haven't already, head over there, sign up to the newsletter so that you get all those and more in your inbox so you don't miss anything. Awesome. Hey, thanks, Zach.
Yeah, thank you, Matthew. Be well.
We will catch you next week with another great interview on Passive House Podcast.